Hey, welcome to Nick and RiseUp Football Talk today. We got a special guest, Clint from On3 Sports. How you doing today, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, fellas. How you guys doing today?
We're doing
great, man. I appreciate you for coming on with us, man. Thank you. We the little guys on the YouTube world, man.
Hey, you got to start somewhere, and we appreciate all your support over at Bama Online. Would love to, continue to show you guys some favors and give you guys some appearances and stuff like that. I think this is going to be a lot of fun.
All right.
Oh yeah, yes, sir. Because I follow y'all heavy over there.
Right. Well, we appreciate it.
Clint, before you start, I got a question for Clint, if you don't mind.
Go ahead, yeah.
Clint, where are you from originally?
I'm actually from Athens, Alabama, up near the Tennessee state line. I'm sure you guys are probably familiar with it. A lot of people from other states, when they ask where I'm from, I say Athens, and you go Athens, Georgia. They think Athens, Greece. I think there's an Athens, Tennessee. Athens, Alabama is always like the last one that people guess or even know that it exists. So not an overly big town, but the fact that Madison and Huntsville, it's growing pretty rapidly. It's getting to be a little bit more well-known. But, yeah, I grew up in Athens. I did live in Sevierville, Tennessee for a few years up in Tennessee country. That was pretty rough. But then we made our way back to Athens, and then I've been in Birmingham ever since I went to college.
All right. So Athens High School?
I did, yeah. 2006 state champions.
Number 33?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Tight end / linebacker?
A lot of linebacker. I did a little tight end, but my best friend, William Ming, who actually played at Alabama, he was a defensive end, and he was our main tight end. So, yeah, I played a lot of linebacker, a lot of defense, but I did play a little offense as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know
that's
a
little bit about
you,
pass right there.
Yeah, man, I know a little bit about you. We've been following you for a while, man. Like Nick was saying, we really enjoy what you guys do. I was actually looking at you and Andrew Bone talk this morning on the clip that you guys had up, and so it's a pleasure, honor for you, for us to have you here, sir.
I appreciate it, fellas. This is anytime you get to talk Alabama football, it's a good day. So certainly appreciate you guys. Certainly appreciate you guys having me on.
All right, go ahead, Nick, man.
Yes. Oh, we just got a couple of questions about Alabama football. I'm pretty sure you probably answered some of these questions 1,000 times, but my first question is, what should we expect from this Alabama team this season?
It's interesting because a lot of people, they feel like that Alabama is very vulnerable right now. I do think there's more question marks than usual, especially at the quarterback position. I can't tell you the last time. I mean, granted, there's been other quarterback battles, but where you really haven't known, it was typically viewed as you got a couple of good options and who ends up winning the battle. And I think that's the case this year. It's just not necessarily viewed in the same way as maybe past quarterback battles. But then the fact that the wide receiver position took a pretty big step back. I mean, the offensive line has not been great over the last couple of years. The defensive line hadn't been great as far as run defense and things of that nature. So just, the Alabama brand or style that Nick Saban built the entire program around, it looks a little different right now. And I think it's more of trying to get back to that. And I think that they're fully capable. They've got all the talent in the world. But when you start trying to figure out, okay, what is the record going to look like? I've said often, 11-1 to me feels like a pretty safe bet. Some people are going 10-2. Some people are even going 9-3. I don't see a scenario where Alabama loses 3 games. It's a tough schedule. Don't get me wrong, but just I think 2 is possible, certainly a possibility. But I would be shocked if they lost 3 games. But they'll be in the hunt for the college football playoff, regardless of who starts at quarterback. I think they'll get at least serviceable play. Right. And with the expectation as far as the offensive line, the wide receivers, we expect all those groups to take a big step forward. And if that happens, the quarterback is going to be set up for success with a new play caller, weapons in the passing game, offensive line, a strong run game to lean on, a strong defense to lean on. So I think they're going to be pretty good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. I agree. So, who's that one player that we're not talking about as much that could be key this season?
A player that is not being talked about as much. You know, I think that offensively, I've been a huge fan of Kendrick Law. You know, there's a lot of really good wide receivers in that room, and I couldn't really tell you who the true number one, who's going to lead the team in receptions or receiving yards or receiving touchdowns. There's just so many different places they can go with the football. But I do think that Kendrick Law, regardless, I personally think he's going to be one of the most impactful receivers. You know, it might not necessarily still show up on the stat sheet each and every week.
Yeah.
His ability to block in the run game, the fact that he's got a tone-setting physicality that he brings to the table, that's infectious to the rest of your team. You know, when you got a wide receiver that's laying, you know, big licks on defenders and running over guys and churning out first downs that maybe you shouldn't have gotten, those are the kind of things that can be infectious to the rest of your offense and your team in general. So that's why I say, you know, he might not lead the team statistically in a lot of these categories, even though I think he's going to be in contention in some of them. But I am very confident that he's going to be one of the most impactful receivers this season, even if it's, you know, it's going to be a heavy rotation. Now, granted, defensively,
yes,
you know, I think that, you know, Jamil Burroughs would have been my pick before he entered the transfer portal. And it's unfortunate what ended up happening with him. But just when I went back and watched him, his efficiency as an interior pass rusher and the fact that we had heard that he had made improvement as far as being a run defender, I thought he was in for a big season as far as being a rotational player. Now, some other guys like James Smith and Jamarian Latham and guys like that, they're going to get a big opportunity with him now, you know, not expected to be on the roster. He isn't going to be on the roster, I'll tell you that. I would probably say my top choice would probably be Justin Jefferson or Jihad Campbell. I like Tresman Marshall a lot. I think he could be a really good player, but these other two guys, Alabama needs some alphas at inside linebacker, and I definitely think that they're both capable.
Right. Okay. I agree 100% with that as well.
Yes. I talk a lot about Justin Jefferson because
he's incredible. Yeah.
I tell people, even though he's a transfer, I tell people I expect to see him more than you think because he's a really fast dude, and I feel like he'll be in a lot of obvious pass situations to help cover these speedy guys coming out of the backfield. And he's a beast too, man. He can come in later, boom on you, he made the tackle. And he's somebody that's gonna close in fast on the defense. So I agree. And we forget about a lot of Alabama forget about Jihad Campbell. Well, he's talked about. I don't think he's being talked about as much, but I think about Jihad Campbell all the time.
Yeah, I just, you know, with Justin Jefferson, his ability to close on the football, when he sees it, he's a heat-seeking missile.
Right.
I mean, he sees it and he goes and gets it. And that's exactly what you want. There's no hesitation. He's got excellent closing speed and athleticism. He can do the 3-down covering. Guys, I think some people, due to his size, question his ability to be an early down run stopper. I don't at all. Like, you don't want him stacking and shedding offensive linemen a ton, but Alabama doesn't play that traditional 3-4 defense anymore where your inside linebackers have to be Rolando McClain or Dante Hightower because they're taking on guards, you know, free guards in a 3-man front as often as they are. So the fact that you see a lot more 4-man fronts nowadays, you don't, you know, and especially with a guy like Jaheim Otis, I think we don't talk about him enough as far as what he's going to be able to do.
Yes.
If you've got him taking up or eating up space and occupying a bunch of blockers, the guys behind him are going to get free reign to the football. And that's where a guy like Justin Jefferson can really thrive. So I think that duo, you know, eventually, I mean, obviously Deontay Lawson's going to be the primary linebacker. I don't want to, you know, get it twisted or anything, but I do think Justin Jefferson and just his overall makeup, despite the fact that he's a little bit undersized, I fully think that he can make a big impact for this Alabama defense if he ends up winning the job. It's still a very much a competition.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So, my next question is, what quarterback do you think benefits the most from Tommy Rees? I know the easy answer is Tyler Buckner. I know that's the easy answer.
Oh, man. It's so interesting because I think all these guys bring different skill sets to the table that Tommy Rees, one thing that I've noticed about him is that he can adapt things to his quarterback. You know, Ian Book was a very Ty Simpson-esque type player where he had a lot of mobility, but it wasn't like he was a dynamic runner. You know, he wasn't a volume runner either. Like Jalen Milroe is essentially a running back at quarterback where he can handle double-digit carries each and every week. and he can punish defenders and bring that physical tone setting style as well from the quarterback position. Tyler Buchner does have the familiarity as far as Tommy Rees is concerned, but at the same time, Buckner's, he's in a new environment. He's got new teammates, new weapons he's got to build chemistry with, a new offensive line. So, I mean, everything for him is different. The Tommy Rees continuity factor at offensive coordinator, that's certainly beneficial, but I wouldn't say that it's, anymore. It doesn't give him any more of an advantage than the other guys who have been there, who have all the other things going for them. To answer your question, Tommy Rees and what he's going to expect out of the position, Nick Saban and Tommy Rees both understand they've got a good run game. They've got a good offensive line that can move people in the run game, and you can play off of that. They got good receivers. They've got good weapons. They're not looking for a quarterback to put everything on his shoulders. They don't want Superman like they did with Bryce Young. Exactly. They want somebody who can distribute the football to the playmakers that are available. And I think that when you start looking at it, Jalen Milroe brings that dynamic ability. I certainly think that he can create and generate offense if he can just learn to play more within the system when it is there, and just distribute the football to your playmakers. You don't have to make all these incredible throws. Just make the routine stuff.
Right.
That on top of his dynamic rushing ability can really set him apart and allow him to kind of, take hold of the job. The problem is that I haven't seen that up to this point. So it's still a question mark. But to answer your question, I think schematically the best fit is Ty Simpson. But will that translate to Ty Simpson winning the job? I can't necessarily say that right now because, there's still some work that he needs to do as well. All three of these guys have strengths and weaknesses. And, I've been asked to predict the quarterback battle and who's going to win it. Flip a coin, because I can make an argument for and against all three of those guys.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I have a question for you. With this being the last season, and me and Nick Jr. and several people talked about this being the last, basically East-West division in the SEC this coming season, right? And being that Alabama was in the first SEC championship game, it would be very befitting, and this is my opinion, and I've been preaching and marching and, got my bullhorn screaming this. It would be very befitting for Alabama to end the East-West, in this 2023 season. I mean, it's all up for grabs, but, do you think that would be a beautiful thing for Alabama to kind of inaugural, from the jump, we opened up and we ended?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Unfortunately, even if Alabama does make it, I don't think the opponent's going to be the same unless Florida comes out of nowhere. And I just don't think that's going to happen. But if Alabama could just get there, it's kind of, during Nick Saban's reign, or whatever you want to call it, the Nick Saban era, Alabama has controlled college football. And just the fact that, it happened relatively quickly too. Like Georgia is starting to get going, but Kirby Smart was in a much better place as far as that program than Alabama was when Nick Saban took over. And yet Nick Saban had them in contention even faster than Kirby did. And granted, Nick Saban had the head coaching experience, and Georgia has Alabama to deal with. I guess you can make the argument that Alabama had Florida with Tim Tebow and Urban Meyer. But what he had built there down in Gainesville was nowhere close to what Kirby's dealing with, having to go against Nick Saban in Alabama. So, there's arguments to be made for both of those two guys. But, yeah, it would be very cool if Alabama could turn around. You start the SEC divisions by getting to the SEC championship and winning it in the way that they did, and then, closing it out. It's the end of an era for sure, and it certainly would be kind of poetic.
Right. Also, with that being said, we will be adding 2 teams come next year, Oklahoma and Texas. Do you see in the near future, maybe in the next 5 years or so to 10 years, other teams coming to the SEC?
That's the $1 million question. I think the SEC would like to stand put if they could. But the fact that the Big Ten and a lot of these other conferences are trying to make moves, or not Alabama, the SEC is trying to hold on to that kind of, they're the top dog right now. And if you get the big brands, which there aren't a whole lot of big brands left that haven't already gone to a conference, USC, even a team like UCLA has a very recognizable brand, Texas, Oklahoma, a lot depends on the ACC. I mean, if the ACC came into play or a lot of their top teams, Florida State, Miami, Clemson, you could really get into some interesting conversations there. North Carolina in basketball, Duke in basketball. But for now, I think that Greg Sankey would want to stay put. I think that you've added two of the biggest brands in college football. You still got the Vanderbilts of the world, and I'm not trying to take any shot at them, but they're not the most recognizable brand. But at the same time, from top to bottom, pretty much, I mean, you've got a nice set of teams, and I think that they would probably be more, it would serve them better to stand put if they can. But I think a lot of that's going to be dictated based off of who becomes available, what happens with the ACC, and of course, what the Big Ten continues to do after adding USC and UCLA.
Okay. And one of our guests in the chat had a question for you about Mr. Perry. There's been talk about Auburn coming in and flipping him. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about Auburn taking one of our commits?
Well, I mean, I will say this, Hugh Freeze's offense, it could be appealing for offensive players. I mean, you can't deny that. At the same time, what has Auburn been doing at wide receiver as far as producing NFL talent at that position? Anthony Schwartz was, I guess, one of their highest drafted guys. That Seth Williams was supposed to be one of those, top tier talents. I think he ended up going undrafted or went in like the 6th or 7th round, ended up with the Broncos for a short period. I don't know where he's at now. But you see, like I said, Anthony Schwartz was a 3rd round pick, but he's gotten to the NFL and he hadn't done much. So as far as, brand recognition at that position, I mean, it's really no question between the two. I mean, look at what Alabama's done, 1st round pick after 1st round pick. I understand last year was a little bit different. I wouldn't be shocked if they started getting a lot closer to where they were, in 2021 when you had a 1st round pick and a high 2nd round pick with John Mechie sooner rather than later, because I believe in this wide receiver room. But I can't really speak to Perry Thompson and where he's at. Now, I will say you could ask Andrew Bone or you could ask Joseph Hastings or Tim Watts, and they could certainly give you a much better answer than I probably could. But what I will say is when you actually look at the two programs and who would do the best job of getting you to the NFL and, being a high draft pick and setting you up for success, I mean, it's really no question right now. But I do wonder how much teams are negatively recruiting Alabama's offense under Tommy Rees. I think that this year is going to prove all that wrong. But at Notre Dame, the entire offense was run through the tight ends, or the passing game was run through the tight ends. I think that was more out of necessity because they recruited that position extremely well, and wide receiver, they really struggled. Yeah. And now that he's in Tuscaloosa and he's got a ton of, viable talent available to him, I think that you're going to see him open up things a lot more than you ever saw him do in South Bend. So, if that is a negative recruiting tactic for certain schools right now, I don't think it's going to be, one for very long. But, I will be curious to see what ends up happening with Perry as well.
Okay. All right. Well, Nick, you got some questions?
So, my other one is, with that being said, following, which position group do you think emerges the most this season?
Oh man, I could go through every position and make an argument, which is what I think one of the big reasons why this team is still so exciting. Like every position outside of quarterback, where I think there is a little bit more uncertainty, even though I'm confident that they'll get steady play out of that spot, serviceable enough to win football games. Might not be as dynamic as you've seen in the last half decade or longer, but I think they'll be fine there. But when you start looking, wide receiver, I feel like there's going to be a ton of growth and development. A lot of those guys last year were freshmen and they were younger and they were still trying to figure things out. Ja'Cory Brooks, even he was only a sophomore. I don't think people realize that now. All those guys are a year older. They're a year more mature. They've seen they're battle tested. They understand what to expect on a week-to-week basis playing in football games. Plus, you have Malik Benson, who's got a little bit of college experience on a much lower level, but he kind of, he's a lot more ready than your typical freshman would be coming in. And he brings, game-breaking ability, but I think tight end could take a huge step forward. There's so many different options, like the offensive line. It's at a lot of these position groups, it's not looking and saying Alabama's in trouble. It's more there's a lot of competition happening, but that's because there's so many viable options at those various positions. And I think that that's something that we're really not talking about enough. And defensively, you can make the same argument. Outside linebacker, I think from a starting perspective is kind of, what to expect. Maybe the rotation might look a little different. Inside linebacker or off-ball linebacker, a lot of competition happening there. I think that just needing alphas at that spot and the fact that there are a lot of viable options, I think that's a group that takes a big step forward. I think the secondary, despite the fact they're losing a ton of talent, I think the fact that you have, Caleb Downs now in Tuscaloosa, that's a guy that you can move around, do different things with, and he's really going to help you on a week-to-week basis be a lot more prepared. So, I know I went kind of around the world there as far as answering your question, but I would probably say if I were to pick one position group, I think the offensive line, because everything is run through the offensive line. Like, think about it. If you're running the football, if you can't block effectively and move guys in the run game, you're not going to be successful. If your offensive line can't keep the quarterback adequately protected, doesn't matter if you got Bryce Young or somebody back there. You're going to have some limitations at times. And we saw that with Bryce Young. I mean, he was everything, and he had the mobility, but there was the Auburn game where he just couldn't get anything going in the Iron Bowl until, right there at the end. It can be very limiting when your offensive line can't keep your quarterback protected. Defensively, if you can run the football effectively, if you're having long, sustained drives because of your offensive line, your defense gets to sit on the sidelines and catch its breath a lot longer. You're not going 3 and out offensively a lot and putting your defense right back out there. So I think as far as the biggest impact and what you will notice taking the biggest step forward, I would probably say it's the offensive line.
Yeah, I agree to that because I tell people, this is my opinion, of course, that like you just said, nothing moves through the offensive line. And with not having a quarterback like Bryce Young, the unicorn quarterback, we're going to lean more towards complementary football, and that's going to consist of depending on this offensive line. So now in practice, you're going to hear about these guys lining up, mauling guys like they used to do, because now we need to move the ball. We need to run the ball when we need to open up the other positions as far as wide receiver. We're going to depend on tight ends probably in 12 personnel. I'm expecting to see more 12 personnel using these big tight ends to move this defensive line forward so we can move forward. So, yes, I agree with that offensive line thing. Yes.
We have another question from the chat. Says, Clint, how do you feel about Sweet Justice Haynes catching passes out of the backfield as a check down?
It's another quality option, and you can't give your quarterback too many of those. And Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously we know what kind of receiving talent he is. I don't think Justice Haynes is going to be Jahmyr Gibbs on that front, but I think the completeness of his game and the fact that he fits more traditionally with what Alabama wants out of its running backs. Like Jahmyr Gibbs, there's no question he was a game-breaking, game-changing talent at the running back position. I mean, he went number 12 overall to the Detroit Lions for a reason. I mean, that's the highest an Alabama running back has gone since Trent Richardson. So, that's I'm not taking anything away from Gibbs, but Alabama typically wants that bigger, powerful back who can move, run between the tackles, move the chains, be physical, be a tone setter. We talk about, tone setters a lot. You'll hear me talk about that a lot. But he also adds a presence as far as being a pass catcher, which is wild because in high school, I guess he was so good at running the football, they didn't really ask him to do it as much as, some other running backs, but he wasn't a huge volume pass catcher in high school, but you've seen what he's been able to do in the off-season circuit as far as some of these recruiting, camps and things like that, the All-American games that he participated in, the fact that, he was there all spring. We heard how effective he was as far as his ability to catch the football out of the backfield. And then you saw it in the A-Day game. It all was put on display. But I think that the other aspect of his game that we don't talk about enough is the pass protection. I think he's pretty ready to be able to hold up in a 3-down role because of his ability to pass protect. Like, you can be a great runner, you can be a great receiver, and all of that stuff is great. But if you can't keep your quarterback protected when it's required of you, if you're the reason that the offense is stalling out on third down, 3rd and 6 or whatever, because you can't get a block, it's going to be limiting. And so, Justice Haynes, I still think he's got some work to do on that front, but for being a true freshman, I think he's much further along than your average player at that position when it comes to pass protection. So whether it's catching the football, whether it's running the football, or keeping your quarterback protected, the kid can do it all. And that's why I think he's going to end up having as big of an impact as I'm projecting, is because of his ability to do it all. He's not limited in any way.
Okay. Nick, go ahead. I can't hear you. Clint, can you hear him?
I cannot.
I'm sorry, I have muted. I'm sorry, guys.
No problem.
Said, besides Kool-Aid, who do you think is the next most important defensive player this season?
Oh, man, that's tough. I'm going to say Caleb Downs. When I think back to where Alabama struggled last year, like in that Tennessee game, a player like Caleb Downs, I mean, what you really need, because everything was, I do think Pete Golding and the scheme and the game plan could have been a much better. I mean, we saw it a couple of weeks later again when Tennessee played Georgia. But at the same time, I mean, what Tennessee was able to do, because you've got the quarterback aspect where he can throw it. He's an effective player who can read defenses and throw the football. He's a mobile guy. You've got a couple of running backs and an offensive line that can run the football effectively. You've got receivers that can separate on the outside. On the inside, you got a serviceable tight end. So really just it was kind of like some of Alabama's offense, where it's more like pick your poison. And they were playing a numbers game with Alabama in the box, just letting them dictate how they were, Tennessee was going to attack them. And they had a tough time. But what they need to be able to do to slow down an offense like Tennessee is be able to man up better, especially in the slot. And there's more nuances than that. But at the same time, a player like Caleb Downs and just his ability to do everything, doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses and stuff. Can be, good in the run game. You can play him over the slot. You can play him in single high. You can play him in two high. I even think he could play some perimeter corner if you needed him to. Kind of like Brian Branch, where you don't really want him to, but if he needed to, he could. And so I think that just having a presence like that, will there be some growing pains and some freshman mistakes? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there are going to be some, at a certain point, but just this is the most college ready defensive player, and really maybe, player in general, both sides of the football, that I've seen come through Tuscaloosa in quite some time. I just don't think he's not just going to start. He's going to be an impact player from day one. And I've actually predicted, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And I know this sounds crazy. You got Dallas Turner, you got Kool-Aid McKinstry, you got tons of guys at all three levels who we could talk about, but I wouldn't be shocked at all if Caleb Downs was the best defensive player on the field for Alabama this season. And that is with me thinking Kool-Aid is going to be playing like a top 10 pick.
Okay. Yes. Okay. All yes. Right.
Yes. But no, he highly capable of that though. We seen how he was moving in the spring game. Like we seen where he was at in the spring game, and I know if y'all been watching high school football, y'all seen what he was capable of in high school. I think he's very capable of that. So another question then. What do you think this defensive line looks like under Kevin Steele this season? I know Freddie Roach is the D-line coach, but how much effect do you think Kevin Steele will have on this defensive line?
Well, I think the biggest difference is I think you're going to see a lot more heavy fronts. Last year they went a lot more, rabbits fronts, where it's two defensive linemen and two outside linebackers in a four-man front. And then you also saw the cheetah package in like their, obvious passing situations where it's one defensive lineman and three outside linebackers. This year, I think you're going to see more three defensive line, one outside linebacker when they're going four-man fronts, because they want to be able to control the early downs. Alabama's defense last year was way too susceptible to giving up successful first down plays. And what it was doing, it was putting them behind the sticks too often. When a defense is having to deal with a 2nd and 3 or a 2nd and 4 rather than a 2nd and 8 or a 2nd and 7 or whatever, it makes things a lot more difficult because the offense still has everything available to them. And I just didn't think that Alabama had enough early down success because they couldn't stop opposing teams' run games consistently enough. And I think that ended up playing a huge part in why Alabama's defense struggled as much as it did last year. So if you go more heavy front, you got Justin Aboybe, Jamarian Latham, some of those guys playing on the outside, and then you can kind of kick them inside in obvious passing situations. Another thing is that I think you see less of the cheetah package. I think when it's obvious passing situations, that's where you really see a lot of rabbits, and some of that's based off of the opposing offense. If it's a Mississippi State style of offense where they're throwing the football 85% of the time, I mean, you're going to want primary pass rushers out there. But I think committing to the run game and stopping the run game and then playing off of that, because you've got talent at all three levels, I think that's going to be the biggest difference between Kevin Steele and Pete Golding, other than the fact that I think Kevin Steele is going to be a lot more aggressive at all three levels. And you saw that in the A-Day game. And I think that Pete Golding, very intelligent guy, great defensive mind, but just because you understand something doesn't mean your players do. And I think sometimes just he put a little bit too much on him. I think Bill O'Brien was a little too simplistic at times in the way that he attacked defenses. And I think Pete Golding was a little too complicated. And I think they both needed to come more to the middle. That would have helped both of them out.
Right.
And so Kevin Steele's presence, I really think, is going to help not only Alabama's defense in general, but that defensive line. Like if you've got disruptors, and we talk about the two gapping versus disruptive, defensive linemen, a guy like James Smith, he's a disruptor. Jaheim Otis, despite the fact he's a space-eating style of nose tackle, he's also got disruptive traits. He's very explosive for a guy his size. He can, get after the quarterback a little bit. I think Kevin Steele will unlock some of that stuff a lot more than Pete Golding was able to.
Yes. And me and RiseUp, we talk about this all the time. Like, we had Eli Ricks on the sideline for a lot part of the season last year. And all you hear is that he's this great athlete, and we seen what he did at SU. But it was one of those things that was saying that he can't get on the field because he can't get the playbook. That's what they were saying or whatever. Some things that was out there were being said. So it's like, why do you have these great athletes? Simplify your defense so your great athletes can go out there and make plays. Like, I didn't understand that. Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think Eli Ricks is a pretty good example. I don't think it was just not knowing the playbook or not being able to understand what was being asked of him. First of all, Alabama does require a lot more of its perimeter cornerbacks than LSU does. LSU, especially under Ed Orgeron, it was a lot more of just, hey, go be a 5-star, go be a player. And I think that Alabama could do a little bit more of that to put players in a position to be successful. Just let them be who they are. But at the same time, the little nuances of playing not only cornerback at Alabama, but just playing at Alabama under Nick Saban in that program, he expects you to do all the little things right. And until you're able to do all the little things right, he won't trust you on the field. And I think that it was a lot tougher for a guy like Eli Ricks because in his mind, he had been at LSU. It's one of the biggest programs in the country, and he had tremendous success. Outside of, injuries, every time he was on the field, he was an impact player. People were projecting him to go in the top 10. So in his mind, Nick Saban saying, no, you need to do it this way to be successful. He's like, I've been successful. Why do I need to do it your way? And I think that kind of caused some, issues that might have not been there with a young player who's still trying to kind of grow and develop. Eli Ricks had been that success. And so I think it was a little bit of that. And there's some speculation on my part as to the degree that affected things. But I certainly do know that Nick Saban and just playing in Alabama's program, you can be an all-star player all day. But if you can't do the little things on a consistent basis, you're going to really struggle to get on the football field because the coaching staff won't be able to trust you. And I think it took Eli Ricks a little bit longer, because of his success that he's had compared to some other players.
Okay. Great take. Great look, from a different perspective. How much more time do we have with you?
Oh, I got about 5 more minutes for sure.
All right.
All right, rise up.
I have a question that most people hate when we talk about this question, this particular topic. But Nick Saban, 71, be 72 this October. So we can look forward to a retirement in, I don't want to say the near future, but once that happens, once Nick Saban makes this announcement that, hey guys, I'm gonna, hang up the cleats and I'm gonna just chill out with Miss Terry and enjoy whatever, rest of my life I have with the grandkids and everything. What do you see the program, Alabama's future? What how do you think the program will? I know we're gonna panic. Everybody's gonna go in panic mode. I'm panicking now, just talking about it. But what do you see happening? The next coach, per se.
I think there's a couple of different approaches to this, because part of me has thought they need to have a bridge coach. They need to have somebody that's not that great, so fans can readjust their expectations to where once you get the right guy in, if he's doing things the right way and the program is having success, I don't think anybody you're ever going to bring in is going to have the success that Nick Saban has, period. Right. So if whoever directly follows him, it doesn't matter how much success they have, it's still not going to be Nick Saban. Right. So part of me has thought, you bring in a coach who's, good, but you're losing, 3 games a year for a few years, and fans are, you're out of the, I mean, I guess they'll still be in the playoff hunt because you're going to 12 teams. But the fact that they're, down there in the 15 to 20 range rather than top 5 every year. But then you bring in the right guy, and now he's got them back in the top 10. They're pretty steadily, competing and getting into the college football playoff. I feel like fans would appreciate that person more at that point after having gone through a bridge guy. Now, at the same time, though, no one wants to go through those years of being down. And by down, by the way, I'm not talking about 6-6 struggling to make a bowl game. This is Alabama. Right. I'm talking about going 9-3 or 8-4, which is, in an Alabama fan's mind, that's still a down year. I mean, last year missed the playoffs. It was catastrophic.
Yes, sir.
And that's understandable, by the way. If Georgia continues to have the success that it's having, the last couple of years, their fans are going to get the same way as well. And someone's going to be able to relate and say, hey, when you're used to being in the conversation every single year and you're the one that's expecting to win, when you don't even make the playoff, it's a disappointment. I mean, period. And really the only fan bases that don't understand that are the ones that have never experienced it. So pretty much everybody at this point. But, at the same time, though, for the longest, I thought that the program was going to be on autopilot for a while. Like just the way that Nick Saban had built it, it was kind of like it was a machine that was just running. It was self-sufficient at that point.
Right.
And we've seen it be vulnerable. We've seen how quickly things can start to tail off. Like, Nick Saban started recruiting different styles of offensive linemen and going after a certain style of player. And we saw how quickly things fell off. It was one recruiting class where you kind of missed on a few of your top guys and things got ugly pretty quick. So do I think that that's going to happen? No. I think that with the rest of college football and where the sport is at, I think there is a lot more parity nowadays. I think that it'll be a lot more difficult to stay atop the mountain. But if they get the right guy in, maybe you don't have to go through that bridge process. But fans will need to understand it, even though you're used to seeing a certain something on the field, you've got to immediately readjust your expectations. And you got to say, 10-2 and barely missing the playoffs, that's successful now. That's still considered a good season. Under Nick Saban, it wouldn't have been, but under anybody else that they're going to be bringing in, it's going to be a different world, and it's going to be tough for fans to handle because most teams go through these dynasties and it's 3, 4, 5 years. I mean, there's people that have been Alabama fans, 90% of their lives, and they've never known anything other than Alabama under Nick Saban. So it's going to be an adjustment period for sure.
Yeah, I feel sorry for whoever that coach is, brother. He it's not going to be good.
I do too.
So I don't want to be in his shoes.
I will say, that's one of the reasons why, I do worry about the recruiting with Lane Kiffin. I do think with Alabama's brand, the recruiting in some ways is going to take care of itself. Obviously, he attacks the transfer portal. But, you've got to have the right mentality guy who can step in after Nick Saban. And I do think that Lane Kiffin, he can roll with the punches. He doesn't let things affect him very much as far as outside media and the attention. He has fun with it. He takes jabs at people. Polar opposite of Nick Saban as far as, covering him. But, that's one reason that I've always had him in that conversation for me is because, I think he's a great X's and O's coach as far as offense, is concerned in today's college football. You need to be able to score points. But, it's also the mentality, because things can get ugly pretty quick. And if you don't have a very tough-minded head coach that can kind of withstand that, it can get rough.
So what I'm hearing is that if we get Mr. Kiffin, we're going to go from Alabama Crimson Tide, where legends are made, to Alabama Crimson Tide. Get your popcorn ready.
Yeah. I will say, as someone that covers the team and covers the program, there's a part of me that would be excited about that. I mean, just because you're getting all kinds of great quotes. I mean, he's going to be bringing up Nick Saban all the time and just, leaning into comparing himself to him. And just if he's falling short, like making fun of himself for falling short, things like that. But you'll probably also get a lot more access to the program. But at the same time, also pretty terrified because fans, they're going to be shell shocked. I think Lane Kiffin's a very fun guy, but I mean, he's nowhere close to Nick Saban as far as personality is concerned and the way that he runs things. I mean, Kirby tried to be kind of a carbon copy of Nick Saban. Lane Kiffin, I think he learned a lot from Nick, but just two very different coaches for sure.
Nick, one last thing before Mr. Lamb get out of here, sir.
Like I said, I really appreciate you for doing this for us because, like I said, we the little guys on YouTube. I call myself Nick Saban Jr. So, hey, this means a lot to me because, like I said, I follow a lot of stuff that y'all do online and on 3 recruiting sites. So, thank you, man. Thank you.
Hey, no problem at all, guys. I would love to come on in the future. Love that you guys are talking about it. I mean, we love covering Alabama, but we also know that it takes a lot more than On3 to keep the conversation going. And I respect anybody that's willing to hop on a camera or hop on, a podcast or whatever, and, help generate interest in the sport that we all love and the program that, we're all trying to cover. So I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been a blast.
All right, man. And if you can get Andrew Bone to come on and talk to some recruiting with us, we would appreciate this so much.
Hey, I will certainly try for sure. Now that's a busy guy right there. I'd like to act like I'm busy, and I certainly am. But I'll tell you what,
he's a new father too. So
absolutely, yeah, that's another aspect of it because kids, especially young kids. I don't have any of myself, but I've had nieces, and I know enough about kids to know a lot of unexpected stuff pops up all the time. But between Joseph Hastings, Tim Watts, and Andrew Bone, just those guys, I mean, they work extremely hard.
Right. Like I said, man, you guys have great content, and we are all fans of your show. We all subscribe to the show. So, like I said, it's a pleasure, it's an honor for you to, grace our show tonight, man. And it's been wonderful. And hope you have a good night, and God bless you, sir.
Thank you guys so much. I'll tell you what,
yes, sir.
One more time, I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been fun.
All right. Everybody, Mr. Clint Lamb. All right. So, man, that was great. I enjoyed his perspective, man. He threw a sign out about Lane that I didn't even think about with the quotes and everything. You know me with my Lane thing. I'm like, man, you got to kick the ball. You got to punt the ball on 4th and 99. You can't hope for it every time, but yeah. So
you gotta admit it'll be quite exciting though, man.
I mean, listen, it will be exciting. Like he said, they're polar opposites. Polar opposites between Nick and Lane. Lane is a more playful guy, more media friendly type of dude. Nick is a more nonsense type of coach, old school, and that type of deal. But We ain't worried about that now. We still got that's what we got. That's what I want right now. I don't want to think about that, you know. But that's just a question I have to ask, you know, because I mean it's gonna happen sooner or later. So, but yeah, man. So Saturday, Odom, you know, we got for in the last week we done picked up 4 commits.
4 commits.
Even though one is in the 2026 class, and that's a long way away, you know, to talk about. But we got 3 for the 2024 class, so we're starting to gain that momentum that you were speaking of. You know, July is going to start heating up, so it's been heating up for us. And then we got this young man by the name of Caleb Odom that will be announcing his commit come Saturday.
Yes.
And we had an Alabama player commit, you know, at him like, hey man, you know, come on to Bama, let's make this thing, you know, get it cracking out here. So hopefully, I mean, I know he's crystal ball to Bama, and that's what everything's leaning toward Bama. Hopefully he come on in and commit to Bama, and then we can, you know, add that 5th to the month of July.
Yeah, man.
You know,
and like I said, with Caleb Odom, I've been expecting Caleb Odom for a while now.
right.
I've been expecting him for a while now, and I've still been backtracking, looking, and right now he looks dang near 100%, like basically 100%. Almost, I think On3 has him at like 90-something%. So I'm pretty confident. In him and his commitment right now.
Okay.
Well, him committing to Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama, right. So, and you know, a few more players out there that we got our eyes on that we, you know, hoping to persuade, even hoping to flip a 1 or 2 here and there. And
hey, Tom Reed, he talked about the German kid. I'm gonna ask you, how did you feel? What were your thoughts when we recruited this kid from Germany?
Man, to be honest with you, I'm like, who the hell is that? I don't know. I didn't know the kid. You know, I had never heard of his name, whatever. But here's my thing. He's been going to camps, right? And as he came to Alabama camp, Nick Saban saw him, and the coaching staff saw him, and they liked him enough to offer him, right? We're fans. We're sitting back and we're looking at all the people who On3 has, or you know, Rivals have, or ESPN or 247. You know, the 3, 4, 5-star rankings and stuff. And this kid come out of nowhere, out of Germany, and is, you know, little to no film of him. And I think his high school don't even really have a football team. You know, he played on like a more of a rec type team, or, you know, type of deal. But they saw this kid and they saw something in this guy. We don't know. You know, I never saw the guy before. So
yeah,
they saw something in this guy. Like I said, Nick Saban offered a guy who we had never heard of about 2 months ago, and he had 0-star ratings on any, you know. So we always say we trust Nick Saban. So my first initial thought, to be honest with you, is, who the hell is this kid?
Who is he?
Never heard of this guy. Who is? I'm trying to look. You know, I'm going to do my research. I'm like, who is this kid? My second thought, once I came to my senses, is it doesn't matter who I think he is. Nick Saban and the coaches saw him, and they see something in him. And what I did see, he's going to be a work in progress, because he got, you know, he hasn't played, you know, but his athleticism and the motor that I seen on the little footage that I did see, I like what I saw, you know. So hopefully he comes and he you know, put his nose in the ground, put in the work, and man, who knows, this guy may be the next big thing, you know?
Hey, I don't know. But the reason why I bring it up because I can't remember. I forget the kid name already. Nick Saban is already going after another dude from Canada.
Hey, listen. People forget John Mechie is from Canada.
Oh yeah, John Mechie. Yeah. John Mechie is from
Now,
Canada. Yeah.
Canada, they play football. they get busy in Canada, you know. So listen, Nick is taking this thing worldwide. He's like, okay, we can recruit Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and we can recruit Mississippi and Texas and Louisiana. But there's some other kids out there, other places, you know. Just like in like the NBA. The NBA get people from all over the place.
Yep.
Why not? Why not? If the kid has the talent and the will, hey, let him go. You know, let's go.
Alabama Tide. First of all, I want to say this. Thank you for reaching out to Clint Lamb for us. I appreciate you very much for that. Thank you, sir. Hey, I know you've been working a couple of weeks on this thing because
Right.
when we first set it up, I had a vacation to be on, so I couldn't commit to it. So I thank you for when I got back, you hopped on it again. I thank you very much for that, man. That was big right there. That was very big. But to answer your question, these kids from other countries, well, in Germany as well, they come over to the States and come to these camps. That's how they can get on these coaches' radar as far as getting committed to these other teams because they come to these big time camps as well. So thank you for that though. Thank you, man. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you, Deuce. But yeah, and I forget what show I was looking at, but the guy who kind of brought that young gentleman over from from the camps, he was like, Alabama is always open. Nick Saban is always open to inviting those kids to the camps. You know, like other schools may kind of be iffy or whatever. He always invites them, and if he see what he like, he's gonna offer. Like he said, some coaches may not because there's not much film on them or what the case may be, but you got to give it to Nick Saban. This man's been doing this forever, and he has a track record.
And that goes back to what I say, because we fans. We fans for a reason. They know better than we know. Like I say, if you leave it up to us, we'll have 9, 10 true freshmen starting every beginning of the year. If you leave it up to us. But my first initial thoughts, I got to be honest with you. When I seen it, I was like, what the heck? I look at his highlights. He showed aggression over there against those guys, but high school football to me looked slow, but that looked even slower. So I was like, hold on, I clicked in my mind, said they're coaches for a reason. They're coaches for a reason. So I don't know what the plan is because some places he's 6'3", 225, and I think 247 might have had him at 6'3" at 200 pounds, but I'm like, it's kind of small, you know what I'm saying, for a linebacker. But I know putting on weight won't be a problem if you seriously dedicated when you come to top-notch programs. But I still as a fan, I have my question. But like I say, the coaches know better than I know. So
right. And here's the thing, also. Listen, he gets here. If he can't pick it up, he ain't hitting the field no way.
Yeah, exactly.
He ain't gonna see the field no way. So like I say, some Saban seeds in him. So I'm not worried about it. He get over here, he either gonna prove himself and show us, hey, in Germany, I know we don't play football like American football like that, but I can get down, or he won't. One of the two. So. But yeah, man. So some recruiting coming up. Fall camp is in a matter of weeks.
Woo! Can't wait,
Man. Can't wait. You listen, because I'm ready for these guys to get out there and get back active.
Yeah.
This is the so-called dead period, and the guys are practicing on their own, and like you like to say, they got some instructions.
I'm telling you, it's real. I know like I said, I know they can't be out there, but like I said, when I played baseball, and that came from our baseball program was top notch. Listen, they couldn't be out there, but we better been doing what they said been doing. What they said. They weren't out there, but they was out there.
Right. Wink, wink.
Like I said, we on the baseball field, but you see them way up there in the press box on the football field.
Yeah, man. So I'm ready to really get here and get these guys back to work, man, and get some pads of clacking and clinking, and then I'm looking for some few videos. I know Saban ain't really letting too many people get out. They let out the video they want to see, but man, it's been a hot summer and I'm thirsty.
I ain't never been so excited for media days, man.
Me neither.
I ain't never been so excited.
Me neither, brother. But I'm fiending for next week,
man. And look, y'all, I want to let y'all know right now too, man. That during the football season, things might slow up a little bit. I know that's a bad time for me to slow up, but I'm in the process of trying to the next 4 or 5-star football player for Alabama. I'm in the process of Georgia, whoever he decides to commit to, whoever decides he wants to pay or who wants to pay for the scholarship. About 12-year-old to start in middle school football, so he been putting a lot of work in that past month or so, and he started his first football practice. So y'all, I'm gonna be spending a lot of time towards that way. So now my little one's gonna be playing little league football too. So
okay, that's what's up, man. Listen, don't turn. Hey, go ahead. What you about to say?
Somebody told me to talk about Georgia a little bit, please. Hey.
No,
Georgia, man. Listen, Georgia, y'all. Hey,
Georgia.
I'm just letting you know. Not this show because I'm doing the Alabama show now, but believe me, I got some Georgia stuff lined up. I got some Georgia fan coming on. He gonna break it down. He gonna break stuff, talk the stuff y'all want to hear on, and I'm gonna talk to him back with it as well. Y'all know me, man. I'm a level head when it comes to football. So believe me,
who wants you to talk about Georgia?
Huh?
Who was it want you to talk about Georgia?
The Dun. What is it? The Dun.
All right, the Dun. I'm gonna talk about Georgia for you. Georgia is east of Alabama. Okay. Yeah, it has cities that's like Atlanta, Macon, Columbus, Savannah. It is bordered by Alabama, Tennessee, South Carolina, and Florida. And that's Georgia.
Hey, I will tell y'all got somebody trending though. Y'all got somebody probably about to commit again. But yeah, man.
That's it. Atlanta is the capital of the state of Georgia. 285 around Atlanta. Fulton County, DeKalb, Clayton, Henry, Douglas.
Remember it all.
Yeah, those, there you go. Alpharetta, Roswell, Marietta, that's in Cobb County. There you have it. Oh, and Julie Roberts and her brother Eric Roberts.
You are funny.
They're from Georgia. They're from the Cobb County area. Travis Tritt, Trisha Yearwood.
Ooh, boy, you funny.
Milledgeville, Georgia has the Crazy House and a military college. And down in Columbus, they have an army base down there. Nick Saban Jr. can tell you all about that.
Fort Moore.
Yeah.
That still don't sit right with me.
I know. I was like, what?
Oh, you work out there on Fort Moore? No, I don't work there. I work on Fort Benning.
Yeah. I was like, what the hell?
Oh, man, yeah, Fort Moore. My bad.
So that's your Georgia for the night, buddy.
Hey, but I got you though. I got you though, bro. I got you. Cause I'm gonna tell y'all my plan. I'm gonna tell y'all on my plan right here. My plan is trying to become the SEC network of YouTube, but more of in a more laid back way. But my plan is eventually I'm gonna be talking about all SEC football. When I get farther on, I'm gonna be talking about SEC football, basketball, baseball, and all that. But right now, I'm sticking to the football. But my plan is to talk all SEC football. So I'm trying to make this a spot on YouTube where you come get all your SEC news from. But like I said, it's a work in progress, though. It's a work in progress.
But he is Alabama. Listen, he is an Alabama fan. So we gonna fanboy Alabama here and there. So don't get it twisted, all right? You see that script, eh?
You see it. You see
it. Well, man, we didn't hit that hour mark, brother. And Clint actually stayed on a little longer than what I expected.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that from him,
and
man.
I appreciate every minute of it, man. I had some more questions I wanted to ask him, and I know you had some more questions that you wanted to get in.
I was skipping over some.
I was too. I was kind of jumping up and around, on my list, trying to get in what I felt was more important to me and what people want to hear. But once again, Clint Lamb, you guys, once you're going on 3, you guys, give them a thumbs up for coming on here and talking to us. Like Nick Saban said, man, we just little guys on the block. We're just trying to make a space for ourselves. So we appreciate that. That was a real good look. Alabama Tide, thank you very much, sir, for making that happen. Yes. You are the man, brother. You are the man. So with that said, man, I guess we're gonna go ahead and close this thing out, man. We're a minute and 1 in, hour and 1 minute in, an hour and 2 minutes in now. So we're gonna close this thing out with a big roll tide to everybody in the chat.
Roll tide.
Tom Reed, I see you.
Saturday. Caleb Odom next, baby.
Caleb Odom next up. Stay tuned. Roll tide.
Roll tide. Ugh.